Hello and welcome. You're listening to Start Again with Shauna Lee, the place where you will be reminded that it's never too late and you're never too old to do the damn thing. So stick around if you're ready to vibe higher and be inspired to chase your dreams. Together, we will uncover your soul's truest desires. Now, if you're ready, let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Start Again with Shauna Lee. Today, I am going to introduce you to a new author. Her name is Shirley Novack, and I'm very excited to hear more about her book, The Story Of, and dig into some of the writing process, and we'll also get a little sneak peek of the next book that she is writing. But Shirley, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We were starting to get started chatting before we hit record, and I thought, no, I want to get all of this in the episode. So thank you for hitting pause on that conversation so we could jump right in. I love to start these conversations with, a little bit, tell my audience who you are and a little bit about you, but specifically, how have you embraced this idea of starting again?
I have started again so many times in my life that it's become second nature to me. I feel that as long as there's a breath in my body, I can start again no matter how old you are, because you might be surprised to hear how old I am. I'm pretty old.
Are you?
Let's put it this way. I began writing my book at the age of 74.
Oh, wow. Okay. I would not have guessed that.
I know. Thank you. People tell me that all the time.
I would like to have a little bit of that ooze off onto me so that people can start telling me that all the time.
Yeah, but I don't feel it. I don't act it. I certainly don't act it.
Yeah.
And I know people tell me you don't look anywhere near that age, but I think it's all because mentally I'm not.
Yes.
But it's amazing because one thing I do want people to know, when I was in the 4th grade, I was 9 years old, and my teacher gave us a project. He had us write a poem about spring. And he was so impressed with mine, he made me read it to the entire school.
Oh, wow.
And he took me aside afterwards and said, "Don't ever stop writing, because someday you're going to be a great writer." I never forgot that. And that was the impetus that got me to always want to write.
Yes.
In fact, he is the only acknowledgement in my book.
Oh, really? Listen, those seeds, we just never know when we're planting a seed for someone and what it will do for their life. So the way you're describing this whole, I wanted to write a book for a long, long time before I actually wrote the book, is very common. I encounter that quite a bit. But tell us about what got you to actually do it. What was it that you were like, okay, today's the day. I'm going to start writing this book?
Well, when my father died in 1984, I found out a lot of things about him that I never knew. He had a very tragic upbringing. And when I heard the horrible stories of what he went through as a child, I always knew that this was a story that had to be told.
Yeah.
But I never had the time to do it. I was helping my kids with their term papers and their applications for college, and then I went back to school, and anyhow, the pandemic hit, and all of a sudden it just came to me. I sat down and started to write. And unlike most people, I didn't have I didn't have an outline. I didn't have a beginning, a middle, and an end. I just started to write. And it took form. It just kept going and going and going. And I would not know from day to day what I was going to produce. And I never went back and changed anything. I found it very easy. I felt like there was a power over me that was directing me to do what I was doing. And it just came. And it took about less than a year to complete the book. And when I decided I did not want to self-publish, because there's nothing wrong with self-publishing, but in my mind, it sort of negated what I was doing, and I wanted a publisher. But you
Mhm.
can't walk into Random House, any of those major publishing companies and say, "Here I am."
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I looked into hybrid publishing. And hybrid publishing, at least this publishing company, you put a certain amount of money up front.
Mm.
I thought it was very small considering what they did. And they do everything from beginning to end.
Yep.
So I only sent my manuscript to one hybrid publisher. And they said, "We'll get back to you in a few weeks and let you know if we accept it." And they called me back in 3 days and said, "We'd like to sign you."
Oh, I love it.
And from that point on, June, July, August, September, it took about 9 months to get actually out in the bookstores because the pandemic had come through,
Yep.
and supply lines were backed up, and it just took a little longer. But it moved very, very smoothly. English was my language, so it needed very little editing.
Mhm.
And they changed very little that was in the book. It just kind of moved along. I found it very easy, which most people cannot say that. I
Yes.
understand.
Yes. Well, I think I've heard lots of different experiences with the writing of the book and the process to actually put words on paper. Um, but I'm glad that you were bringing up the publishing feature or topic because I think that's where a lot of people get stuck and they don't even start writing because they don't know how they're going to publish it. And I often will say, well, you can't publish anything you haven't written. So how about you start writing? Because it
I mean,
does take a while.
I don't know if everybody that writes a book thinks of it as being publishable, that they're going to get it published eventually. I think it's their hope, but I think a lot of people stop halfway
Hmm.
and say, "Oh, this is going nowhere. It's a waste of my time." I never experienced that. It's some days I had nothing. The head was empty, and I
Hmm.
wouldn't attempt to write.
Hmm.
One day, I submitted 12 pages in one day, and you know yourself if you've written, that's a ridiculous amount. It's a
Yes.
lot. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yes.
I've never done that again. I mean, my new book, I'm giving myself, I'm trying to do 3 pages a day, and I'm finding it difficult.
Yeah. I gave myself word goals, so it wasn't pages necessarily, but it was a certain, if I wanted, I reverse engineered it, right? So I knew the total word count of the book needed to be a certain range, and I would say, okay, well, I want to get this book done. I'm always super aggressive with my goals for myself. I want to get this book done in a month, and I'm like, well, that's not realistic because that means you're going to have to write like 10,000 words a week, and that's not going to happen because I think I had the same thing where I would sit down those moments when I was in flow, I could get 2 to 3,000 words down
Mhm.
pretty easily. But
And
the
that's a
days
lot.
that it is a lot. But then the days that I would sit down and I'm like, well, I don't really know what I'm gonna write about today. I'm not feeling compelled one way or another. And I would force myself to write and I would struggle to get, 750 words or something. And so every day is a little different in my writing process. I also found it very different to write creatively versus, so I've written a novel fiction and I've also written and published my nonfiction self help book. And those are very different experiences for me
Absolutely.
when I'm writing. And so for creative writing, when I'm just generating a story, I'm literally creating something from nothing. Um, I liked to kind of get into creative flow, and I've gotten to the process now where I can kind of set the stage, so to speak, so I can get myself there easier and faster. But the first time around, I was just waiting for creative inspiration to hit. And I would go 2 weeks and not write and just be like, well, I don't know where it's going to go. And it didn't matter where I thought it was going when I sat down to write, it would go in a different direction. Like that story just happened. And that was super fun. I loved the experience of just seeing where it would go. Um,
You were as surprised as your reader would have been.
Absolutely. I would sit down and think, okay, today I'm going to write about this character and she's going to do this. And then I was like, nope, we just took a left turn and now we're going in a completely different direction. But it was a lot of fun to write that way, but it took a long time. And so when it came time to write this self-help book, it was much more like a homework assignment. Like I sat down to
Mhm.
write my essay. I had an outline. There was a structure to where I needed to go or wanted to go. So it was a very different experience. So are
Yeah.
your two books similar?
Nope.
Okay. So
But
tell us a little bit about this first book that you wrote.
the f
What is it about?
the first book had a very unusual beginning. It was, my father was born in Koretz, Poland, and he was born to a tyrant, horrible, mean, miserable father and a sweet mother. His mother died when he was 12 years old,
Mm.
and his father sent he and his 9-year-old brother to live in the care of a brothel. Who does that?
Oh, wow. Wow.
So he said, I'm going to America. When I have enough money, I will send for you. It took 3 long years before he sent for them, and in that time, my father had been raped by a Polish soldier.
Mm.
So I had the meat of the story to begin with,
Mhm.
and that was factual, and most of the rest of the book is fiction.
I see.
So I took that and I ran with it. I had my father coming face to face with a Polish soldier like 20 years later in America.
Mm.
And that's really the first page of the first page of the book is when he meets the Polish soldier for the first time in
Oh,
America.
I
Then it
see.
goes back to the beginning. Um, so it has love, lust, love lost, murder, mayhem,
Wow.
kidnapping.
Wow.
It has everything. It's a
Yes.
love story. It's everything.
Okay,
And I
okay.
didn't know how it was going to end because I didn't want it to end. You know,
Yeah.
you become attached.
Oh,
They
sure.
become your children.
Yes.
And then when I realized how I was going to end it, I just quickly wrote it down and sent the manuscript out.
I love it. Well, and so tell us about the next book you're writing. You said that the experience is not the same. It's been a different experience for you.
Well, the second book is strictly fiction. It's based on human trafficking.
Mm.
So I'm doing a lot more research on this one, and it's painful.
Yes.
It's really, it's a big problem in our country right now. But when you start delving into it, it's painful to write about experiences, but it's strictly fiction.
Mhm.
Um, I tell people that if the FBI shows up at my door and confiscates my computer, they're going to see all the research I'm doing on human trafficking and pornography. And
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, and I can imagine that topic being so heavy and serious that you probably need a break from it. You need to be able you
yeah,
can't
I did.
devote time day and day.
I actually, I did. I, I took, I actually took the last 2 months off from it because first I had hand surgery,
Mm, yes.
so I couldn't
That'll
write.
delay some
Then I
writing.
got COVID.
Oh, yes.
Then my brother just died
Oh my goodness. I'm so
unexpectedly.
sorry.
So for the past 2 months, I've been getting my head back on straight, and now I'm writing feverishly.
Oh, wow. Okay, interesting. I did find that the longer breaks I took, I felt like when I did come back, it kind of poured out of me. Like it had
Yeah.
been waiting for me. And then when I was finally ready, it just flowed onto the page.
And that's what's happening now. It's just pouring out of me. I actually look forward to sitting down and writing every single day. I walk every morning, and that's usually where I start to formulate what's going to be next in my book.
Yes.
It's very
Yes.
cathartic.
Yeah, the physical movement worked that way for me too. At the time when I was writing my novel, it was sewing. So I'm a seamstress and I would start sewing, working on a project and through just it's very repetitive, this cutting and measuring and stitching. And so it was very therapeutic for me to be able to kind of work through. Generally, it's how I work through stuff in my head, but for me to work through the characters or the storyline or, where I wanted it to go next, it was really helpful to have some mundane task for me to focus on physically,
Yep.
and it would get the momentum going for me.
Yep. With me, it's cooking.
Okay.
That to me is my idiot time, because you don't have to, well, maybe some people do. I just have to read a recipe, but I love to cook. To me, that's cathartic. It's just, I love it. It's
I
relaxing.
I wish I felt that way about cooking. I
Well, I
really
wish I
do.
could sew.
Well, this is a good point. Yes. Yeah, I do know how to sew and I do love it. Yeah, I do not love cooking. I think cooking for children, especially picky children, has just sucked the fun out of it for me. So the other day someone said something along the lines of cooking with love and the difference between eating food that someone has cooked with love versus just something that someone made. And I thought, oh my gosh, my kids are just eating food that I've just made. Like I've not been making it with love. I thought, oh, well, maybe that's why they don't like it.
That's very funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So, we talked about your book and the new one you're writing. What do you think surprised you most about your journey to becoming an author?
Number one, how much I absolutely loved it. It became my passion. And when I did become published and I started to do book clubs
Oh, yes.
and book signings and all that other stuff that goes along with it, how receptive people were to me. And
Mhm.
I mean, how, oh my God, I never thought of it as being this huge accomplishment. I really
Yes.
didn't. I
Yes.
mean, you just write, you get a couple, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And so many people are coming up to me and saying, oh my God, I've always wanted to write a book, but I'm so afraid to start.
Yes.
And I think it makes me feel good if I can be an influence in getting them to sit down. I do take a writing class. I've been
Okay.
taking a writing class for about 7 or 8 years now.
Mhm.
And there are 8 of us in this class, and no one else they've had it taken out of the curriculum because we will not let anyone else in the class. Well,
Well,
you
now
know what?
how does the class continue for 7 years?
We sign up very quickly every
Oh,
semester.
you guys fill the class.
And so what has happened is if you're in a class and there's like 8 people, you become a family.
Mhm.
And in your writing, it becomes very honest. And what
Mm.
happens in class stays in class. So for a stranger to come in at this point would be
Oh,
very
sure.
difficult.
Yes.
So we finally convinced the school to take it out of the curriculum because the teacher will not teach it there anymore if they let strangers in.
Oh my goodness. Well,
And we become amazing. Yeah,
yeah,
what
and
comes out of that?
that actually is hitting on a really important topic or tip or advice that I have heard, but I don't think most people um, put a lot of weight into when, especially when they're first starting out and they're just venturing into this. I think I'm going to write. Let me put some words down. And this idea of um, comrades, your community, your group that you can rely on to share your writing with and get feedback. Like that is such an integral part of honing your craft and getting better is being able to share it and also receive the feedback. And that loop that especially when it's reciprocal, right? You can do the same thing for other people.
Yep.
It becomes so valuable. And I think a lot of people don't know how to do that. How would they find a group? So maybe walk people through how you found that class.
Actually, my husband encouraged me.
Mm,
I said, I don't have time to take a class. I don't, I'm busy. I am running a business. Anyhow, the school I can walk from my home to the school.
okay.
And they had an adult education program at night. And they had a creative writing class. And I signed up for it. That was it. And
The
then
rest was
every
history.
semester, the same people were signing up. And there were 2 other people in this class that were petrified to start writing a book. And because I did it, they are now writing a book, each one of them.
And that alone is why I started this podcast, because
Yep.
watching someone else do the thing that you are scared to do but want to do is so incredibly valuable. I don't call them. I've learned that those people are called expanders because they expand your view of what's possible for your own life because they've done
Yeah.
it. And so and then, selfishly, I continued the podcast because I just get to meet all these incredible people and hearing their stories. It's what lights me up. And so I love it. I love that is how you're seeing that come full circle for yourself. That's amazing.
And you know what? The 8 of us are so different from each other. There is no way that we ever would have come together in a social setting.
Yes.
The age discrepancy isn't that great, but it's 3 men. Actually, it was 4 men and 4 women. And like one of the women is a retired chaplain from a woman's prison.
Oh, wow.
One of the men has MS. One of the girls, it's everybody has a different backstory completely.
I love it.
One is a psychologist, one is a strategist.
Oh, wow. So very different.
Yeah. And their writing styles are totally different.
Yeah.
One is a Vietnam veteran.
Wow.
And he suffers from PTSD. So,
yeah, you're right. Your circles would never have collided or overlapped.
No.
Interesting.
No.
I love that.
But it has created some amazing work.
Mm-hmm.
And we're thinking about putting some of our work together, in a book.
Yeah. Oh, I love those collaborative pieces. And I'm hearing more and more people do that, actually. This idea of collectively writing a book. It's a great way for, aspiring authors to become published because it's less daunting, right? If you're contributing a chapter only. I love that. Well, let me ask you this question because I love to ask this one. What advice would you give to the younger you?
The younger me, never say can't. Should have, could have, would have are not allowed. When I have 3 children, and the whole time I was bringing them up, I said, there are 3 words I never want to hear from you. Should have, could have, would have, because you can't have regrets. If you make mistakes, you learn from them. Yes. And I would tell the younger me not to be afraid of being wrong.
Oh my gosh,
you can be wrong. But if you learn from it, there's nothing wrong with it. Mark Graban wrote a book, My Favorite Mistakes. Because everybody makes mistakes and everybody does something wrong. And I think if you feel that you're inferior because you have done that as a child, which I did many times, by the way.
Oh, sure.
I had a mother who said, you can't do this, you can't do that, you'll never. Which made me want to do. Yes. I can.
Same.
And
I have that same affliction. If someone tells me I can't or I shouldn't, my knee-jerk reaction without a thought is watch me. Like I don't even put conscious thought behind it. And yeah.
My parents told me I couldn't go to college. Become a secretary, become a housewife. Education is going to be wasted. Because you're just going to get married and have children and be a housewife. So I worked like crazy and I made enough money. So I put myself through college. Of course, tuition was a lot less in those days.
Yes.
And I could only afford an associate's degree. So I went for 2 years.
Yeah.
And I got a degree in laboratory science.
Oh, wow.
But I did not want to be a lab technician. I wanted to do something more. And I read about this group in Boston that were beginning to operate on fetuses. They were the pioneer group in fetal immunology. And they were looking for someone with a master's degree. And I read everything I could about these people. And I went in for an interview. And my mother said, you'll never get this job. Why are you even wasting your time? You'll never get this job. Well, I did.
I love it.
And they were the pioneers in fetal surgery. And they said, we really want someone with a master's degree, but your enthusiasm is so overwhelming, and I was
Yes.
cheaper,
Yeah.
that, we have to hire you. And they sent me to the University of Rochester to take their medical school to take a crash course in hematology.
Wow.
And I became the hematologist for their group. And
Listen,
we were the pioneers.
I love this story so much because it only validates what I have told people over and over again, and that is apply anyways. Even when you don't think you are qualified or you don't have exactly what they're asking for, apply anyways. And
Yep.
you did it and it worked out.
Oh my God. I mean, amazing, amazing. And then federal funding Nixon was president, and we lost federal funding. So I was the only one in the group that knew everybody's job. And they had to let everyone go except me.
Wow.
And I would come in some days and there would be nothing to do. And then I'd have to be there for 48 hours straight because we had money for an experiment. And I was a newlywed at that point. And so a paramedical school opened up in Boston, and they were hiring people to teach the medical assisting program. And I applied.
I love it.
And I became a teacher. I started teaching. I taught anatomy and physiology to the whole school, and I taught the medical assisting program.
Wow.
And I think that was my favorite job of all.
Really? Well, and you said you own a business as well.
Well, I went back to school when my youngest started nursery school, and I became an interior designer.
Yes.
And I ran my whole interior design firm for the past 40 years. However, during all this time, I built a house on Cape Cod. And it was in a resort area, and they had the idea for building the house, my husband wanted to rent it every summer, and I didn't want to rent it. I wanted to stay there.
Right.
So I had to find a way to stay there. They had a big marketplace with 24 boutiques and stores, but they had no candy store. So I said, I'm going to open a candy store here next summer. And that way the kids will always have a summer job.
Oh my gosh.
And I get to stay.
That is so brilliant.
And I did. I knew nothing. I don't even eat candy. I don't like candy. And my daughter and I traveled to every food and confection store place during that winter. And we opened Simply Sweet, which was our candy store. And my kids were the most popular kids in the town.
I am sure.
Of course.
Yes.
And we had it for 7 years.
Wow.
And one of our biggest clients was Cyndi Lauper.
I love it.
And she needed some boxes one day, and I said, I have them in my garage. Anyhow, P.S., she was coming out with her new CD, True Colors.
Yes.
But there was a delay on it. So this was in August, and her True Colors was not coming out till November. And she pulled a copy of True Colors out of her purse. It was my daughter's birthday, and she gave it to her. And she said, promise you won't call any radio stations because this cannot be released yet.
Wow.
And we had her own first unabridged copy of True Colors.
That is incredible.
Isn't that incredible? So everything leads into something else.
Absolutely. Yes. And your start again moments are over and over and over again. Like this is
over
incredible.
and over and over. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. You're like,
next I'm going to be a pole dancer.
I love it. Well, we will follow along. That sounds amazing. Well, and when you say that, I'm like, I have no doubt you will do whatever it is that you set your mind to.
No, I will not be a pole dancer.
No, I suspected you were joking, but I'm just thinking, I believe whatever you say that you're going to do is what you're going to do, which is amazing. So
if you believe it,
yes.
If you believe that there are no boundaries.
Yes.
You may not succeed at everything, but I think the failure is in not trying.
Yes. Absolutely. Well, and it reminds me of that phrase that says, shoot for the stars. If you don't make it, you might end up on the moon. Like, You don't know where you're going to end up, but it's not going to be right where you're sitting today if you're shooting for something really big. So go for it.
Right.
Yeah, I love it.
And it makes life interesting.
Oh, and lots more fun.
A
Well,
lot
and
more
this leads into my next question, which is what do you now believe is possible for your own life?
fun. Well, I want to finish this book. And then
Yes.
what I really want is a movie being made out of my first book.
Oh, yes.
I have been told that it would make a great movie,
Oh, sure.
which I think it would actually. And so that is what I'm putting it out there.
Yep.
Producers,
Yes.
screenwriters, it's a good book. It's a great story. The story flows. People tell me they can't put it down. In fact, the way I have this other publishing company interested in me is I did a podcast,
Mm.
and the person who was hosted the podcast said to me, I hate historic fiction. He said, I've only read 2 in my life. The first one I couldn't even get through. He said, yours I could not put down.
Yes.
He said, I have someone that I know very well who is a book publisher. And would you mind if I gave him your information? And the next day, the book publisher called me, the very next day. And he said, I want you to talk to my editor and stay in touch. I understand you're writing another book. Would you talk to my editor and stay in touch with her? And she gave me a piece of information, a piece of advice that I will pass on to everybody because this was so valuable.
Mm-hmm.
In my new book, there was a crime committed. The crime was in the middle of the book. It was going to start in the middle of the book. And she said to me, can I give you some advice? You want to make the first page gripping. You want to make someone read the first page and know that they have to keep turning.
Yep.
Put the crime on the first page.
Oh, wow.
And I did. And you know what? From that point on, everything came easy. It started to flow.
Oh, I love that.
And so I've been in conversation with her, and to date, she loves everything I've written. She hasn't changed a thing. And when they can't sign it until it's complete, because I'm still a nobody.
Well, what is your goal for finishing? What have you set
this
yourself?
is, I'm saying the beginning of March, April, May. I would like to have it done by the end of April.
Okay.
It's more than half done right now, but now is when I'm really determined. I'm getting out 3 pages a day.
That's awesome.
And I've got 150 pages done. I've got 46,000 words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I cannot wait to first read your first book, but also hear when this one is finished and published. I'll be first in line.
I need
to
a
read
title,
it.
though. I can't come up with a title for this book.
Yeah, yeah, my novel, I have I call it a working title because I don't love it. And I'm like, well, it'll come. It'll come. But my last question for you is the most important. How can people find you and your books?
Well, I'm on Amazon. I mean, the book is on Amazon. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, BarnesandNoble.com, Fulton Press, FultonBooks.com.
Well, and I will be sure to provide all those links so people can very easily go and find you in those places. But yeah, we'll be sure that people can find you and your books. But I am so appreciative of your flexibility and actually getting to recording with me today. It was a little bit of a challenge. So thank you for being here.
Well, no, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a while, isn't it?
It has been a while, but listen, we made it and I love it. And I'm so, so thankful that you joined me.
Thank you.
Well, hey, thanks for listening today. And thank you for your reviews. They mean so much to me and they help this podcast grow. I just love reading them. So if you haven't left one yet, please do. Now, listener, are you having your own start again moment? Your path to thriving after divorce is here. The future may be uncertain, but there is hope. We know that losing your identity as a wife can be disheartening, and the grief that follows is humbling. In fact, it can feel crippling. But if you are ready to get back on your feet, download my Start Again guide to get you pointed in the right direction. You can find it at shaunalee.com/startagain.